you look at the chances of pushing successful innovation through, you've actually got to look at the leadership, and that means that the C-level function have to be incredibly engaged. And the obvious example is Apple, so I'll get it out there early, and you guys can scrabble for some other ones. And you look at what made them successful. One guy at the top, Steve Jobs, we all know very well. Everyone knows the story, but he was just so driven, and in terms of his messaging around how he built the culture of the organisation around, to John's point about talking about the DNA around innovating. And if you don't have that message being delivered from the top, what you will have is perhaps some inspirational individuals within that organisation knowing that it's something the organisation should do, but getting frustrated fairly quickly or not so quickly, depending on their personal circumstances, and probably looking for pastures new.
Just to add to that, I think it's the gloss I'd put on that is it's not just also about the message from the top. It's about the culture, which has been alluded to earlier today. It's very easy for messages to be given from the top, and actually what you really mean is, to what extent does that do you need somebody at the top who's going to affect the change or program within, or whatever it is within the organisation that's going to make that cultural change happen. Steve Jobs wasn't just about the message; it was also about the culture he fostered in the company. I suppose that's the added bit that really needs to come from the top.
It can work if it's done properly, and Apple is an example. Another one is perhaps Orange. When it first came out in the UK, CEO Hans Schnuck had an innovation department that reported directly to him, and that was the critical thing, because if perhaps I have an idea, it might do you out of a job, or your department, or half yours, or something of that nature. And sticking innovation departments somewhere down in product development, which is inherently what happens, smothers them, and big corporates smother them. So big corporates need their processes and rules, but there needs to be a back door, and that should be an innovation department partnering and finding external, innovative, creative young companies and taking it directly to the CEO. And if they like it, then having a fast start option for it. It's the only way they can work together. And I think the challenge is it hasn't, because that's such an old institution. One of the things that concerned me in everything I heard this morning were the two aspects. One is there seemed to be an obsession with technology. Technology does not drive innovation. People drive innovation. So a personal experience of innovation, we haven't done much Barclays bashing today, but I've just left them, bad service. I moved to Handelsbanken because they actually have a bank manager in a building who I can go and sit and have a coffee with and makes a decision on our relationship. That's actually innovative today. It's going back 100 years, but then it got lost. Today, I consider it innovative, and they've won customers as a result of that. So it's about how people apply it, and technology is just one of the many tools within that industry. Many years ago, when I was an apprentice, we had R&D departments, and they were fun places, like walking into Star Wars. They were typically the first ones that got hit when cost reductions and downsizing came in, and R&D was cut right out. Now you've got companies like Google saying 20%, and then they try and pick some good ideas. You've got we've seen Free Mobile, and in France pretty much destroy elements of the telecoms industry, and the founder there has set up a finance fund, and he invests literally in about 30 new technology companies every month, just throws 50,000 euros at it. One or two might stick, they immediately buy them and absorb them, so they make all their own technology. So in a sense, he's outsourcing his innovation and then financing it. So all of them are different ways of doing R&D, they're different names, but they're good, they can only be good.
I think the financial services industry is struggling with the whole word culture at the moment, enormously. I mentioned earlier, John mentioned I used to work at GE. There is a culture that rewards and recognises innovation within employees, because it's a behaviour that the organisation wants to promote. In the financial services company where I used to work before GE, there wasn't that culture at all, and I'm not sure that it's necessarily there today. It's more, I think, about recognizing and rewarding immediacy of profit, or immediacy of avoiding loss, or managing costs. And so I suppose I'm not sure that the culture is, I don't see it, but then I'm not necessarily the best person. I'm certainly not the only person to ask.
My only comment would be, I think that question is really, in the current events, a wider, broader political question. And people on this panel, I think, would struggle to answer it. But I think the good thing is, in a sense, is if the bank's culture is going to change at any time in recent years, now is the moment. Now is absolutely the moment for other reasons than innovation. But actually, that could be used as a catalyst to drive greater innovation as well. Yeah. So it's both. There's both a problem, but there's actually, in my view, a big opportunity too.
Yeah, I think that, pick up something somebody said before, though. I don't think anybody innovates in order to make their bosses or their shareholders more money. I think we talk about the organisations that do and don't, and they have a burning desire to do something, which is a proposition for a client of some. It's back to Uday's point. Everything has to end with a client, and I think the idea of in a big retail bank or a big corporate bank turning in and saying I must have a brilliant idea in order to improve earnings per share by 0.01%. I don't think that doesn't get people's creative juices going. And somehow the guys who do innovate well are because it's the product is, or if you like, the burning ambition is to serve people well, and the earnings come out of that rather than it's starting with the earnings. And that's the problem, isn't it, with financial services? It's almost now that the product has become the money.
The reality is, in this answer is that, how corporates innovate is, yes, they have to have some internal functions that, enable their own creativity to come through. But equally, we're all thinking around the same problems here. So the need to partner and to collaborate has probably never been more paramount. And so in order to do that, you've firstly got to establish an environment that feels like it's a safe zone for all those involved. And that environment needs to be able to attract not just those corporates that have got the issues in financial services that they are looking to solve themselves internally, but ones that they can share to a wider audience of entrepreneurs, startups, tech enthusiasts. And underneath that, with a stable base of mentors, advisors, serial entrepreneurs who have been successful, investors, and underpinning, all of that again, you actually then need to have the customer centricity around that, which are the retailers or the consumers. And the reality is no environment for financial services exists like that. There are parts of those environments that exist in more general tech scenes, but they tackle one very specific problem that people kind of felt existed in tech 5-6 years ago, and that was, if I've got an idea and I've created a technology application, how do I find somebody to invest in me and go to market? And so basically, the way we kind of look at it from an Anthemis point of view in financial services is that there's a deeper structural issue that in order to fix that, you really do have to be quite openly collaborative about how you bring together all these different components. And I think, really sort of summarising that, when you look at the audience in the room today, we actually have the component of the foundation platform, the entrepreneurs, corporates with the innovation issues, investors, lawyers. We have the broad mix of people here, and that's one of the most exciting things about putting this day on. So maybe that's the platform upon which we build upon, and maybe that might end up in something that looks like Anthemis Labs. Who knows?
Mark, you want the final word on that as the last speaker and the last question?
Put pressure on there. I agree largely with what Michael said, to be honest. I mean, the component parts of the solution are here. It's just a case about putting them together. We've got the right brains, I think we've got the right people, the right organisations. It's a case of making it happen. Part of today, I suppose, is about bringing those people together, and hopefully, to some extent, we've achieved that.
Well done.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody.